project series of webinars. And thank you very much for choosing to spend this hour with us and learn more about collecting environmental data in Ukraine. My name is Anna Makin. Today, me and my colleague Irina Babanina, we will give this lecture. Just a few words before we start about our project. The project is called GROMADA. Ukrainian translation means a settlement or a community, but the full name of our project is a European University Supporting Legal and Community Capacities for Ukraine's Environmental Recovery. This is Erasmus Plus project. It's funded by the European Commission. And we are a team of 7 project partners. Lund University is our leading partner. We work at CEOBS. And then we have Hamburg University, University of Copenhagen, Odessa State Environmental University, and then Systesys and Web2Learn. Our project is a 2-year project, which started December last year and will continue until end of November 2025. And this is a 4th lecture, today we will be talking about working with available environmental data in Ukraine. And just before we start, a few house rules. So this lecture will be recorded, and at the end it will be put on YouTube and our website. Only the lecture, but Q&A session won't be recorded. So during our presentations, you can ask questions in the chat, or you could keep them until the end, and ask them yourself. You will be able to raise your hand, and we'll unmute you. You will be able to ask it, or you can put them in the chat. We have a Ukrainian translation, so if someone feels more comfortable listening to Ukrainian translation, so please use it. You could choose Ukrainian channel, and our lovely interpreter would help you to understand everything in Ukrainian language. And okay, then let's start. So a few words about our organization. It's called Conflict and Environment Observatory. It is a UK charity organization which is located in the north of England. It was established in 2018, and all our work is focused to increase the protection of people and ecosystems from the impact of armed conflicts and military activities all around the world. We do lots of work in Ukraine, but at the same time, we have done research all around the world. We are a team of 14 people. Mostly everyone is located in the UK. Our work we are doing remotely, using different satellite programs and doing desk research. Our work is focused on several activities. We support global and local development of legislation to measure the impact on the environment caused by armed conflicts, as well as work in mine action, helping mine action operators to become more environmental friendly in their work. And we also have a really big database of incidents like in Ukraine and also in Sudan. So we work at different levels. In general, the environment is a silent victim of armed conflicts and wars, and our work is to challenge this statement, to challenge this and to attract as much attention to the environmental issues caused by the wars and armed conflicts. Today's our webinar will cover 3 different topics. I will be talking about environmental data collection system in Ukraine, while my colleague Irina Babanina will be talking about changes in environmental legislation during the war, as well as public participation and protection of the environment in the view of economic recovery of Ukraine. So to start my presentation, I would like to say that the environmental consequences of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine are better documented than any other conflict in history. And it happened because of different reasons. First of all, we have to understand that at the moment, the level of development of digital technologies is really high. We can use artificial intelligence, we can use drones, different programs and softwares, which could help us to measure the impact on the environment, to do different modeling and different programming. As well as at the moment, there is a easy accessibility of satellite imagery, and the researchers from different parts of the world could do a very in-depth and high-quality research using these satellite images. We cannot forget about the work of the Ukrainian government, together with domestic and international civil society organizations and intergovernmental organizations, were doing lots of work in advocacy to talk about the environmental crimes, ecocide in Ukraine caused by the war, and attract global attention to all the problems that are in Ukraine at the moment. We cannot forget that the war in Ukraine started not in 2022, but in 2014. And before the full-scale invasion, Ukraine already had experience in collecting data on the impact on the environment caused by the war at the temporary occupied Donetsk and Luhansk region, as well as annexed Crimea. So one of the organization for security and cooperation in Europe, a project coordinator in Ukraine, had a long-lasting project, and together with Zoe Environmental Network, they did regular kind of reports, and one of them, like this, well, you can see on the slide, is environmental assessment and recovery priorities for Eastern Ukraine. This was done on a regular basis before the full-scale invasion. And they closely monitor the quality of Siversky Donetsk river basin. In general, in the globe, there is in the media there is interest to environmental issues, and Ukraine is pushing a lot to focus on accountability for war crimes in Ukraine. When we are talking about accountability for conflict-linked environmental harm, we should say that the methodologies, program, protocols are not developed properly yet, and Ukraine cannot use experience of the other countries and just replicate it and use that, collect data in the similar way, and then use this all this evidence for the future courts. The methodologies, procedures for collecting data is developing now, and everyone knows that environmental data is a foundation for this accountability, and it's something on which the future recovery and reconstruction planning should be built. But it's clear that there are so many gaps in this data collection and questions to the procedures, the quality of equipment that is used for the data collection, the protocols, the quality of labs, that at some point it's possible that Ukraine will meet a big challenge to actually prove that, prove and use the data that's collected in the future court cases. The big challenge at the moment in Ukraine is the baseline data if some incident happens, like the infrastructure, like industrial infrastructure is destroyed, and there is a leakage of chemicals or fuel, and the soil sampling is done, and it's proved that there is some pollution, but no one knows what was at that area before. And to find this baseline data is really, really challenging in Ukraine, but this is very important for the future evidence collection. It's a bit easier with in the nature protection parks or protected areas, because for them, they keep a record and do regular assessment of their territories, and there is a baseline data for them, but not for the majority of industrial facilities, which were under attack during the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Let's talk a bit about the scope of environmental harm in Ukraine. And here we should understand that the front lines is like 100 kilometers. Like every day in the news, you could see that some industrial facility or a critical infrastructure or agricultural facility, it was bombed or shelled. And of course, there is an impact on the environment and the area around and human health. So it's not like one incident. It's like every day it's accumulating and more and more dangerous impact on the environment. Constant release of like chemicals, pollution due to the damage of industrial and energy facilities. On this slide, there are just some examples of some of the incidents. It was in 2022, like fuel storage, logistic warehouse, thermal power plant. So you can imagine the damage what was done by this particular incident. And what I would like to highlight that unfortunately in Ukraine, all these facilities or majority of these facilities, they are very close to the urban areas. So on the next slide, you can see these green dots on the maps. So actually where these facilities are located, and you could even only imagine like what is the impact was on the people living around this facility with all that pollution that was in the air and possibly like spread to the water and soils. Another important and a very dangerous environmental issue is like militarization of nuclear sites. Here we talk about Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which was occupied at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, but then after the Kyiv Oblast was liberated, it's now under control of Ukrainian side. However, like there were forest fires there, and the Russians built fortification at the area. So the level of radiation, we were saying that is under the normal level, but at the same time, we could see that that was a big threat. What could potentially happen if there was an explosion at the nuclear power plant. Now everyone in the world is following the news about the Zaporizhzhia power plant, which was occupied by Russia in March 2022, and it's not under Ukrainian control at all. It's used as a military base. There are lots of military armed vehicles there, soldiers are staying there. There are minefields around, and from time to time there are like shelling nearby with the fires to administrative facilities. Yes, the facility is like majority of the reactions are like in this closing down procedure, different stages, but at the same time it is a danger and it's a constant threat not only to Ukraine but to the whole world, because it depends on the wind at that time and the weather conditions. Who knows where the radioactive cloud could move if something happens there. There is a pollution to the coastal and marine areas. That the coastal area is used as a protection, I would just want to say that the minefields could be put on a coastal area in case of danger of attacks. The different vehicles, different vessels, different ships were attacked, or it's the military ones or the ones which carry the fuel or something, and the leakage to the water, and it has a damage impact to the sea life and the coastal areas. The other thing is the green gas emissions caused by the war. And in general, in the world, there were no developed methodologies to make these calculations to understand the actual impact of the war and the amount of green gas emissions that are caused by different activities of the war, including like forest fires, and vehicles moving and many other activities. And Ukrainian scientists and experts are doing lots of work in developing these methodologies, which could be used by other countries in the future or even now. Now, who is collecting data in Ukraine? Of course, it's the government of Ukraine. It's the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Nature Resources. And they have 9 specialized bodies and agencies that are collecting data, like normal monitoring data, as well as the data related to the impact of the war. And they work together with the Office of the Prosecutor General to be able to collect data in a way that it is accountable and could be used as a criminal or international justice cases in the future. Ministry of Environment created a special platform. It's called Eco-Zagroza or Environmental Risk. It can be an application on your phone, and people could report if they became a witness of some damage to the environment or incident or something. People can report, or the quality of air is bad or something. They can always add all this information in this app, and it's all collected by the Ministry of Environment. Ministry of Environment has a newsletter, and if you really want to follow about the situation in Ukraine from the environmental point of view, you can always subscribe to it, and every 2 weeks you will receive a newsletter. And one of the last ones, they were saying about the other platform, which is called Swidok platform. It's a witness platform. So basically, it's like a website where every Ukrainian can write their own story of something that they experience, and the Ministry of Environment encouraged people to write about environmental crimes or environmental situation caused by the war, just to record it, like different people's different opinions and experiences, to have it as a archive of that. The data also collected by domestic and international NGOs, as well as intergovernmental organizations. And these organizations works in the field of environment or humanitarian law or development-oriented organizations. So the Ministry of Environment has different institutions that are agencies that are collecting data. For example, the Ukrainian Hydrometeorological Center, State Agency of Water, Ukrainian Geological Survey, State Consumer Protection Service, and the special department of the Ministry of Environment, which is working on nature protection. I would like to highlight the special role of the State Environmental Inspectorate. So the Ministry of Environment developed different methodologies how the damage to the environment caused by the law should be measured, how the evidence should be collected, and then how the price is put on that. So at the end, the number and how big is the damage. So this methodology was developed by the Ministry of Environment, but actually the State Environmental Inspectorate, these inspectors, they are the ones who are collecting this data. They are actually the people who are going to the site, if it is possible, after the incident, and they do soil sampling. Together with the State Prosecutor's Office, depending on the case, they collect soil sample, water sampling, and do the measurements and calculations at the end. On this slide, it's a structure of the environmental institutions in Ukraine. Probably it's a bit hard to see because it's quite small, but I will share a link to the report where you can find it and have a better look. So among all these institutions, from the legislative branch, we have different committees at the parliament, Верховна Рада of Ukraine. Then we have between legislative and executive branch, we have a Ministry of Environment with all these institutions, which are and agencies that are collected data, which I mentioned at the previous slide. And then we have the other ministries which are also supporting with collecting data, and we have a state statistics service where the statistics are. And from the law enforcement, important here is the state prosecutor's office, where they have a specialized department on environment that are collecting evidence on the eco side. Let's talk a bit about Ukrainian NGOs who are working and collecting data. That from the beginning of the full-scale invasion, their work and areas of specialization has changed a lot, because now they are trying to collect as much information about the incidents, about impact, long-term impact on the environment. And I would like to mention a few of these organizations. Probably some of them know them. That organizations like Environment People Law, Eco Action. On their website, on the slide at the bottom, you could see a map. It's their maps. They have today 1,621 incidents. So they use media to collect information about these incidents, which are potentially have a damage to the environment threat. They're not doing a very in-depth analysis, and they are saying that geolocation might not be precise and exact, but in any way, you know, their map could show actually, and the number of incidents show the intensity of the armed conflict in Ukraine. Another organization is Save Dnipro. They have their program, which is Save EcoBot. Their information about the air quality in Ukraine and radioactivity radiation level. The other institutions that are doing lots of analysis and collecting data is like Kyiv School of Economics, and they are working a lot with construction waste and debris, like that kind of calculation. They have a cooperation with an organization which is called You Are Damage. It's a IT experts. They created this company, which is using artificial intelligence that you can train to do different things. They use satellite images and they use drones images, and they could, for example, like on this slide on the top, you see the picture and you see the damage to the building, and they analyze this damage. They can calculate the level of the construction waste. They use the drones and images for the craters of the explosions and many other things. There is also a center, regional Eastern European Fire Monitoring Center. They work a lot with the forest fires in Ukraine. And there is a special group, like Ukrainian Nature Conservation Group, which is dealing with nature protected areas, Ramsar Convention areas, and many others. From the international organizations, I would like to mention a few of them. We closely work with Zoe Environmental Network. It's an NGO which is based in Geneva, and they have their own platform. This is called EcoDozor public platform. They also collect information about incidents in Ukraine. They do scanning of the social media about the incidents. They try to find geolocation, but they don't do in-depth like diving into this incidents. We work closely with them and use their database to do a more in-depth analysis and confirmation of the incidents that they have. So we have our own database, which is not public, but some part of it will be public soon at the next month, at probably like beginning of April. We will have a map on our website with 25 incidents in the biggest incidents in Ukraine that had impact on the environment. So you will be able next month to look on our website and have a read about this 25 incidents. The other organization is a humanitarian data platform, REACH. They do in-depth analysis of like particular areas, and then you can read their reports. We know that NGO PAX, it's a Dutch organization, that they also have their own incidents database, which is closed, not open to public, but they have several reports on their website. There are a few US-funded organizations like NASA, Harvard, and Conflict Observatory. They also collect data and do analysis using satellite images, like on the impact on agriculture and other things. So you could see that there are different actors and lots of organizations are collecting data. Some of us are working together. Some organizations work separately. So there will be ideally all this data should be going to the Ministry of Environment and as an evidence for the future cases. Let's mention a few international organizations that are also helping with the collecting data and doing a lot of work. For example, like Organization for Security and Cooperation, they have a program at the moment in Ukraine that have environmental project, and they support Ministry of Environment to develop these methodologies for calculating damage caused by the war. Then UNEP is working in Ukraine, and they have a strong cooperation with the State Environmental Inspectorate. They help to build the capacities to train them to use different programs, different methodologies, bring in experience from abroad, and help them to collect data properly. UNDP has a big environmental project at the moment in Ukraine, and they focus on energy, communities, and construction waste. WWF Ukraine working in the forestry area, and as well as demining aspects, demining the forest and forest management. FAO, IAEA, and World Bank, and they all monitor their areas of expertise like agriculture, radiation, and the World Bank is releasing this rapid damage and needs assessment. They're accessible on their website. They released the recent one where you can see not only the way how they measure the damage, but also the numbers, like how much money it costs and how much money is needed for the recovery. And then coming to the gaps in environmental data collection in Ukraine, I would like to mention a few is like early response that sometimes it takes a really lots of time for the environmental inspectorate to go to the site and collect the data. And this is important that some points, some steps needs to be done straight away to decrease the damage. There are problems with accountability, that the way how the data is collected, it might not be okay in the future to use this as an evidence in the court. And important that Ukraine, as a candidate member to the European Union, the legislation in Ukraine should become environmentally stricter and stricter, and there should be some kind of a plan for addressing these challenges of recovery and reconstruction. Just a few recommendations. What's important to do to meet these gaps and to collect data properly. One is capacity building activities to train people who work in the State Environmental Inspectorate, to help them to use like remote sensing methods and other things, as well as to help them with the material base, with different equipment for the labs or special kits that they could have and go to the field and do some analysis on the spot quickly. There is a need for like a big comprehensive strategy how to collect this data and for accountability of this data. And there is a need of like a very strategic monitoring plan and with the perspective of the future recovery and EU membership of Ukraine. So I just gave an overview of this data collection in Ukraine. But if you want to go to know this topic in detail, you can download this assessment, this report on our website, and which we prepared to go together with Zoe Environmental Network, and there will be you will be able to go again through the slides and information which I said before. So thank you very much. I will give the floor now to my colleague Irina, and if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or Q&A, or you can ask at the end of Irina's presentation. Thank you very much.
Good evening, dear participants. Thank you for attending the lecture, much appreciated. Let me start sharing my screen and continue the presentation by my colleague. Just a moment. And to continue this lecture, I would like to talk about the changes to the legislation on access to the information about the environmental condition, which were introduced during the wartime after the full-scale invasion, and in connection with the imposition of the martial law regime in Ukraine. First of all, when the invasion just started and clearly everyone panicked, and the access to most of the registers and most of the environmental information sources was closed. However, the scholars and the civil society activists argue that some types of environmental information should never be closed from the public, because the timely access to them is a prerequisite for preventing ecocide, genocide, protecting human health, and minimizing the civilian casualties and civilian suffering. This type of information includes timely informing on emergencies and information on emergency preparedness. For example, where to go, what to do, and what first aid and personal protection measures should be implemented in case of a certain type of industrial accident, especially if this accident is caused by shelling, if it is extensive, and if the enterprise safety precautions are out of order. Another very important type of information is the information on environmental status and basic water, air, food quality, and safety. In Ukraine, the State Consumer Protection Service is now in charge of the drinking water quality control all over the country. And another section of the environmental information includes the duty of the government authorities to inform about their decisions, surely with censoring of some sensitive information and with some limitations. However, this is ultimately necessary to ensure accountability. And another important aspect is the duty to appoint persons or departments which still continue to work with the public information requests, so that citizens are not deprived of the information on the environmental conditions, and liability for the violation of the access to information. However, some types of the environmental information remain closed, and there may be a good reason for this in terms of safety and protecting some sensitive information. For example, it's statistical, historical, archive documents that may not be restricted by law, but it's really difficult to obtain them now, especially if it's archive documents on urban planning, documents on geological prospecting or geological research, or the documents which may influence the understanding of infrastructure planning and infrastructure vulnerabilities, as well as environmental vulnerabilities, such as mine drainage, hydrotechnical structures, etc. The sensitive data also remain closed that may give a hint to the enemy about certain infrastructure or civilian vulnerabilities. The public cadastre remains closed. However, this is a dubious decision because it may deprive the citizens of the right to be aware of land deals, of the status of their land plots, etc. And this is one of the most contested decisions by the civil society and activists. The state geological survey data are restricted, for example, the groundwater data, and it's quite understandable because just one sabotage operation would be sufficient to poison the entire groundwater aquifer, and groundwater is the emergency reserve of the water supply, which should be strictly protected. However, on the other hand, we cannot gain access on the data on its quality or its use. And after intense discussions, the Ministry of Environment issued its order of the 3rd May 2023, which opened some types of the registers and data sets for the public. And in the presentation, you can see some of the most important, in our opinion, registers, which are now either accessible to public or published once a year as a data set. It's a list of pesticides and agrarian chemicals, a list of permits for air emissions, list of facilities and objects emitting the largest amount of air polluters, state cadastre for protected areas, the red and the green books of Ukraine, the register of environmental impact assessment, however with certain limitations, the largest polluters of water bodies, the register of greenhouse monitoring and reporting, register of waste declarations and waste management data, and also the register of licensees authorized to conduct business related to hazardous waste transportation and management. The register of operations on hazardous waste transportation is also made public. And also, there is the obligation to make public the calculated scope of timber harvesting so that the civil society, the communities, and the citizens may track down the scope of timber harvesting and potentially increase deforestation, as lots of timber is needed for construction and for fortifications. And to continue this lecture in terms of work with information and in terms of the ability to influence the decisions based on the obtained information, I'd like to dwell for a short time on the changes of the public participation instruments. First of all, it's the changes to the environmental impact assessment procedure. The environmental impact assessment procedure was a big victory of the civil society and the communities when it was introduced in Ukraine since 2018. However, it was introduced in other countries much earlier. And in connection with the imposition of martial law and certain limitations on public restrictions, and in connection of the need to speed up the procedure of obtaining permissions for certain types of activities, because there is a need for economic development and there is a need for fast recovery. Certain amendments were made to the impact assessment procedure. For example, if previously there were only two types of consultations, that is public consultations for some projects or planned activity, and the consultations with responsible specialized state authorities, such as the Ministry of Health, if it was necessary. The new legislation implements the consultations with the state bodies and local governments, which are relevant or which are involved in this project or planned activity. On one hand, it's a good thing because, for example, the local government may support the community in terms of sustainability and somehow influence the potentially harmful project or express their disapproval of the project and thus strengthen the environmental requirements to this project or altogether achieve its cancellation. And on the other hand, for example, in mining, the local governments receive a share of rental payments for the extraction of minerals. It is a fixed percentage for different types of minerals. For example, it's like 3 or 5% for oil and a fixed percentage for iron ore, for non-ferrous metals, etc. And these rental payments are included as the revenue of the local budget. Therefore, if the local authority is pressed for funds, for example, for construction, they may agree to a potentially harmful project to be implemented on the territory of the community. And the result of this consultation with the local authorities may influence the result of the procedure as a whole, and it is published after the public consultation. So it is kind of a separate track for the consultations. Moreover, the time frames for the impact assessment decreased for all stages of the procedure, for the public consultation notice, for public comments and remarks, and for the comments of relevant authorities. On one hand, it can help speed up the procedure, and on the other hand, it may exclude some of the public from participation if they were not informed properly or in time, and it can decrease the quality of analysis of the impact assessment report, because if it is a big and complicated document, it would be difficult to analyze it properly in a shorter period. And moreover, public consultations are held by video conferencing if less than 10 persons registered, which will be applicable onwards. And this video conferencing rule applies for the entire duration of the martial law. No environmental impact assessment procedure is held for occupied or frontline communities, which is kind of logical because of the difficulty to ensure this. However, this procedure may be held upon request of the project implementer and if the research is still possible. The environmental impact assessment is not held for the restoration works, and this is also kind of a two-bladed sword. On one hand, it is important to speed up the reconstruction for some essential infrastructure. For example, if it is a thermal power plant, then it is important to get it reconstructed quicker, otherwise people will rely on generators, and it's not sure what would impact the air quality more. Or if it is the water treatment facility, then it should be definitely reconstructed as soon as possible. And on the other hand, it is a little bit dubious legal provision, because there is no specific limitation on what exactly project can be considered the restoration works. And moreover, additional grounds are implemented to allow to refuse the positive conclusion on the impact assessment procedure. For example, it can be refused on the grounds of incompliance with public consultations and some other reasons. Another important legal instrument introduced specifically during the wartime and actually intended to tackle the consequences of wartime for communities are the comprehensive restoration programs. The comprehensive restoration programs are developed for regions and for communities. And they have the opportunities for public participation, for public consultations, and for public input or public contribution in the development of this program. And these programs include quite a solid environmental block, which we can summarize in short as containing the following sections: the general environmental assessment, the impact of hostilities or terrorist acts on the community, damage to infrastructure and the feasibility of its restoration, analysis of the resources for restoration, environmental consequences for the community, the needs for territorial rehabilitation, such as cleanup, demining, and management of waste, especially destruction waste, and disaster resilience and mitigation infrastructure and activities, which are necessary to be taken into account, as the hostilities often may create extensive calamities, extensive damage to the infrastructure and to the natural environment of the community. Moreover, the comprehensive restoration program, if it is properly developed and if it includes the participatory and equal and well-informed process, may offer great opportunities for recovery. For example, honest and comprehensive public participation. This program may ensure the implementation of the Build Back Better principle into the community planning and into the community infrastructure rebuilding. It may also offer opportunities for the nature-based solutions in the community or even on the regional level. Opportunities for land conservation, for implementing the resource-efficient technologies, and for implementing or improving or integrating the environmental monitoring systems that existed in the community, or implementing new environmental monitoring equipment and systems. And what's most important, this program may lay foundation for the balance between economic development and nature protection, which is, I may say, a delicate balance, because on one hand, it is necessary to give nature more room and to give more opportunities for recovery. And on the other hand, the economic development, the self-reliance, and industrial development for the community is also important, because we should not, I think, forget never that the biggest enemy of our environment is actually Russia, and the biggest threat to our environment is actually the war itself. Therefore, the resilience and preparedness here, as well as infrastructure resilience, are really important. And moreover, the new register of the strategic environmental assessment was implemented on the ministry's ecosystem portal. And the strategic environmental assessment provides the opportunity for participation in the development documents, strategies, programs, and planning documents. This procedure existed even before, however, it was digitized quite recently. And as for the key areas for new legislation development, which proved necessary to cope with the challenges posed by full-scale war, I should mention such important things as land rehabilitation and conservation, especially rehabilitation and conservation of the lands contaminated, polluted, contaminated by explosives and rendered unsuitable for agriculture. And there should be solid procedures for assessment of this land. For example, now there is the legal provision allowing farmers or land users to waiver the rent payment for a contaminated or mined land, but there is no clear procedure to assess what exactly are the characteristics of this contaminated land, what should be its status, what pollutant status, etc. And mostly these lands are considered unusable if they are not actually used. And it's not clear what remediation measures should be appropriate for them, what's their geochemical status, or whether they can still be used. Another important area is waste recycling and management, especially destruction waste, considering the fact that the hostilities generated a massive amount of waste. About 50% of the construction waste in Ukraine contains asbestos, which is a huge problem to tackle. And before the war, there was no clear system which could handle this massive amount of waste. And a lot of construction waste were just brought to the solid waste landfills and left there. Another important area, which my colleague Anna mentioned, is the proper damage quantification and assessment and capacity building for this. Another important area is water resource management and ecosystem restoration. And to close our lecture and our topic, I'd like to mention the civil science or citizen science approach and how it can be integrated in the data collection and public participation. On the positive side, it's the participatory approach, which allows all the interested parties to take part in assessing the quality of their environment and in developing mitigation or remediation measures. It allows for the independent monitoring, especially in the areas where monitoring systems had been destroyed or the monitoring is insufficient. It allows the opportunities for the low-cost and accessible research. For example, portable air or water quality equipment. And it allows the community to collect the evidence for the environmental harm, but mostly for planning and rehabilitation rather than for litigation. I will talk about this a bit later. And moreover, the citizen science approach can be a really great community cohesion instrument, considering that environment is very high on the agenda and the communities have a very strong and kind of very grassroots interest to ensure the nature-based recovery. And when community itself has this interest in the nature-friendly recovery, then it's likely to achieve much better results than when something is kind of delegated to them from top down. And community is having more ownership and more control over this. However, as for the legal validity and litigation, the expectations for the civil society should be properly managed. I think many people will expect the evidence or results collected by the civil society methods or by portable methods to be used as evidence for ecocide crimes or for nature destruction crimes. But in fact, it's very important to have a proper procedure, and in fact, it's the court which decides on the admissibility of evidence. Therefore, it's necessary to approach this purpose of the civil science, of the citizen science, with some care. Another problem is calibration and standardization of the equipment. As there are no standards for portable or for decentralized monitoring systems yet, so this may prove a bit difficult to handle, and this may influence the consistency of results. Moreover, another issue is the low accuracy and consistency of results, which can be caused by, as I mentioned, the peculiarities or limitations or calibration issues of the equipment, and by the lack of knowledge and comprehensive understanding of the environmental factors to be studied. For example, it's quite difficult to get consistent results of soil sampling if you do not know exactly where to sample, what to sample, and how to sample. And there definitely should be a person trained in sampling and in identifying geochemical hotspots, pollution hotspots, geochemical barriers, properties of the territory, etc. Therefore, if these results are collected by a person who is untrained, they may have a considerable inaccuracy. However, citizen science is still a very solid and good approach to be integrated in the assessment of harm and to be integrated in the rebuilding or resilience. Thank you for the attention, and please feel free to ask your questions.